The next thing I want to talk about is brushes. We've looked at some, well, obviously we've been using brushes for some time. You should have seen in a previous module how to, use some shortcut keys on the keyboard to increase and decrease the size of our brushes. But this time I want to talk about the brushes panel, and you're actually going to do some work in the book on this as well. I'm just going to create a new file. It doesn't even matter on the size. And I just want to kind of go through. I'm going to undock this. There we go. Use that teacup later. Oh, dock it up here. There we go. That's what I wanted. All right. As you can see, we can dock the windows if you haven't seen that already. All right, so my brushes panel is not up here by default. I'm actually going to bring it up. And the brushes panel gives us additional functionality for our brushes. We can create brush tips that are quite a bit different from what we would have been able to achieve otherwise. Let me just kind of go through some of these and show you what it means here. As we select each of these different options, we can change the brush. So this is the basic brushes that we have. This is the same thing that we would see over here with our brush tips. Exact same thing. But if we go into the shape dynamics, we can begin to change some things about our brush. Everywhere you see the word jitter, just go ahead and think random. Basically, every time you add jitter to one of your tools, you are adding randomness to that tool. So this first one here, size jitter, is going to change. It's going to make the brush actually randomly change size. So we get some texture to the brush. So we can begin to have some brushes that look and feel a little bit more diameter. We have minimum diameter. Well, we're actually not going to have a minimum diameter because if we push the minimum diameter up, as you can see down here in the preview window, it actually takes away a lot of the capabilities of the jitter. I'm going to come back to angle jitter. I'm going to show you roundness jitter first. Angle jitter wouldn't show up unless we actually change the roundness as well. Roundness jitter is actually going to change how the brush tip appears as far as whether or not it's circular or elliptical. And you can see that did quite a bit to our brush. You can see here, that gave us a lot more texture, much more texture. And now, because we have roundness jitter, our brush is not always circular. Now, if we change the angle, you can see what happens. It actually will give us not only do we have ellipses generated by our brush, but now they're turning an angle. So crank that up, and now see what happens. Now we got something that's almost like kind of a watercolor effect going on there. I'm just going to select all that and then delete. That's Control A, and now I'm pressing delete on the keyboard. So we can add a lot of randomness to these, and we have minimum roundness down here, and we can choose to play with that as much as we like. Scattering can be a lot of fun. Now we can actually knock the brush tip off of the axis that we're painting on. We can even change it, do both axes. Doesn't really make that much of a difference there. We can increase and decrease the count, so making it paint a little bit more intensely. And then we can even change the jitter on the count, like we can increase that, and then we can actually change the jitter so that sometimes it paints a lot, other times not so much. And we can create some very interesting designs. We're getting some nice textures. This is a great way to create artistic backgrounds, and it's going to get even better here in a moment. We're going to continue to play with things. As you can see, this might be, it almost kind of looks like a tree. It's like I'm painting some tree leaves here. If I added a little bit of, if I change the color a little bit, go a little bit darker now, and now in some areas, add just a little bit of color to it, just a little bit here and there. Maybe a little bit more on this side. This is the kind of the inside of it. And change it one more again. And just adding some richness and some depth, and you can see what begins to happen here. We can do some really interesting things. Textures we can add. I don't find them that useful. I'm sure you stumbled upon these. It ends up doing some weird things in most cases. So like if I actually, it doesn't really seem to, in my mind, have a lot of uses. But I will let you guys go ahead and play with that. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off actually. Dual brush can be a lot of fun. We can actually add, see, a second brush. We can actually choose to add a second brush, and so it's basically like one brush is painting within another brush. It can be very interesting. I'm going to go ahead and start another file so you can see how that works. I like what I got going on there. I don't want to get rid of it. So you can see how that kind of changes the appearance of that brush. And now, play with that a little. I mean, just change the brush around, and you can see what happens, and get some very different effects. Color dynamics. Color dynamics can be a lot of fun as well. So I'm going to find, let's see, I'm going to use, there you go, I kind of like that. Go into the color dynamics. This is interesting. This is a lot of fun. We can actually change it so that we're not just painting with one color. Like if I play with the foreground background jitter, it's actually going to jump back and forth between the green of the foreground, the white of the background. So let's actually try that. So you can see what happens there. Kind of interesting effect. We have a hue jitter, which is actually going to change the color. Very interesting things going on now. Saturation is going to play with the saturation back and forth. So we can add even some more vibrance. You see how that's just a bit more vibrant than we had before. Brightness jitter, so it'll darken and lighten. And the purity, I don't mess with very much, but you can do that as well. Play with that, and it gives me some more vibrant colors. But I like having the jitter in there. So, and then of course, if I went the other direction, it would take the saturation out quite a bit. But I like having that right in the middle. But if you really like that color, you can really pop it up. But you can create some very interesting textures and backgrounds. Very cool stuff that we can do here with that. All right, and then there's some other options down here at the bottom. I'll let you play with those on your own. This is really what I wanted to show you up here. Now, one last thing about brushes that I want to show you, and this is, I don't believe they show you this in the book. This is pretty slick. I want to show you how you can actually make a brush out of anything. And I mean anything. If you have the information, you can turn it into a brush. I'm going to turn this teacup into a brush. All I'm going to do is I'm going to Control A. I've now selected that image, and then I'm going to come into my Edit menu, and I'm going to define a brush preset. You can see the thumbnail for my brush is the teacup, and it's even giving me the file name as the name of it. I'll click OK, and now I actually have, let's change that to a really crazy, vibrant red color. There we go. And wow, it's large. I don't know how, okay, there we go. Because that rendering issue, I have a problem there. There we go. So you begin to see what happens there. I can actually paint. Let's actually get a new file here. New. And I'm just going to change that to black so you can see it. I can actually paint the teacup. Now change the color. I have a red teacup in there. And now, you could really have a lot of fun. Say, let's decrease the size on that. And now let's go into my brushes and let's play with the color dynamics. We have the color jitter going on now. And look at what you can, you really can create some very interesting designs very quickly, very easily with these tools. And I want some bigger cups now, some slightly bigger cups in here, some added randomness. This now becomes a fun design tool. And let's put some really tiny cups in there. Little tiny baby cups. But you can see what the possibilities are. This could be the the beginnings of a background design for a coffee house, things like that. Very cool things begin to happen when you understand what you can do with brushes. So a lot of fun. Play with these tools. Really great opportunity for some background designs.